Good morning and afternoon, crypto warriors. We are back again live. This time I am joined by none other than the father of, the daddy of, call it what you want. This show is now called Foundations of DeFi, none other than Reggie Middleton. What's going on, Reggie? How you doing today?
Nothing much. I ask everybody to excuse my rather casual demeanor, but I was at the gym. I'm taking a break, trying to get cute like King, you know?
Oh man, listen, I think everybody appreciates it. I know when I saw it, I was like, hold on, you on some New York rooftop? Like, is this Equinox New York? And I love it. For all of those who are always hating, this is what you aspire to do on a Wednesday afternoon, folks. All right, now let's get to it though, Reggie. So I'm sharing a link across platforms right now, but this is a continuation. Shout out to Marlon as well. Marlon Maley, is the normal show host. He was out this week, but he will be back with everyone next week. Of course, you can see him on Sundays as well with this All About Polygon series where he takes a deep dive into Polygon. But with that being said, we're going to continue with the discussion from last week where you all were essentially talking about how Bitcoin, the updated code now, as I understand it, infringes on your patent. So really quick, can you give us a synopsis for those who missed last week of what they missed and your take on what your patent is and what Bitcoin may be doing?
Okay, so in 2013, I came up with what I would consider advanced DeFi, decentralized finance, which is actually a subset of the invention. The invention is conditional transfer of value using a blockchain, using a distributed ledger. I'm sorry, there is a difference. And we patented it as we built several software applications and in embodiments. We patented it as we went, filed it. It was granted in Japan very late 2020, granted in the US in 2021, very late again. And we've taken the last 2 years to basically study how it could be applied. And long story short, things such as Bitcoin, the Bitcoin white paper, the Bitcoin original implementation predate the patent. That's considered prior art. Arguably, maybe the concept of Ethereum may have been at the same time as we came up with the idea, but the patent predates Ethereum itself. All these other chains came after it that I know of, but this is the issue. In order to progress, the chains have to develop. They add more features, more flexibility, more durability, etc. And so they're not as if they were launched. So the Genesis block of Bitcoin looks very different now than it does from the Genesis block. The same with Ethereum, RippleNet, blah, 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 on and on. Because we have early roots in the conditional transfer of value, more advanced financial or economic applications, we feel that the vast majority of the crypto industry is touched by the patent. I think that's a very politically correct way of saying it. Okay, we did a deep dive on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin infringes on the patent multiple ways, not just one way. So it's not as if one tangential feature. There's several, with multiple claims. So, and by default, the Lightning Network is well.
I didn't mean to interrupt. You said by default, Lightning Network does it as well?
Lightning Network as well. Yeah, the Lightning Network is essentially a layer 2 on top of Bitcoin. We make the same claim with Ethereum, and Ethereum's layer 2s, etc. We looked at Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and RippleNet's implementation of ODL, which is on-demand liquidity. And then a bunch of projects, Axie Infinity, Uniswap, Compound, the list goes on.
So just to be clear, though, you're saying before like Bitcoin, the code was updated, say 2017, predating 2017, that would not have infringed on the patent, but since it was upgraded, it does now.
No, it did infringe in 2017 as well.
Okay, so when was the first time, in your estimation, it infringed? Since its creation or since a certain year, possibly?
Probably early on. I'm not going to give the exact date, but early on, you know.
Okay. So let's say for the case of Bitcoin specifically, let's say this is true and infringes on the patent. what does that mean specifically? Because when people hear things like this in this market, and we talked about this privately before, I say, I always scorch the underground. I'm a degen in this crypto space. I'm on forums, chats, Discords, Telegrams. I'm everywhere. And one of the topics and some of the topics I saw and some of the themes I saw about this was like, well, what does this mean for the overall market? What does this mean for the price of Bitcoin, the volatility, the maturation, the Bitcoin improvement proposals? Like, what does this mean for all of these things? And your take, what does that mean? Let's say Bitcoin does infringe on your patent, as you're saying. How do we move forward in a Bitcoin dominated market and world?
It means absolutely nothing. Most people who buy and sell Bitcoin have no idea how it works and what goes under the hood. So whether some of it is patent or not, they shouldn't care. They wouldn't know anyway. I think it should lend some credibility to Bitcoin for certain very advanced players because there's certainty in the property. A lot of people are going to be surprised because they didn't do due diligence. And that's a real problem in the industry. You have very, very professional investors, I'm not going to name any, but there's $1 billion investors who've been doing this for 20, 30 years, really know what they were doing, hit blockbusters and home runs with many other big companies from Twitter to Square to Coinbase. They definitely know what they're doing. For some reason, chose not to do any due diligence on the IP side. We're very, very confident of the Bitcoin infringement. Before I even bother mentioning it, at least 3 or 4 separate entities have agreed or disagreed on it. And until I get unanimous consensus, I say nothing. Unanimous consensus all the way down, up and down, technical, legal, the whole nine.
Well, a few things. If it does end up being that, and you do start to get those people with consensus to have that consensus, folks, you saw it here. Okay. I mean, listen, none other than Reggie Middleton live, poolside on a rooftop in New York. Okay, folks, this is what crypto.
It's the gym. It's not all that. Not all that key. It's the gym. My brother was working out.
Hey, but still, this is cryptocurrency, folks. This is Bitcoin. This is our industry. I love it. No, but seriously. So, okay, going back to that, you're saying on the since the normal person, the retail person, I agree, they don't know what's going on the back end, so this wouldn't affect them. But when it does come to the people who know what they're talking about, how would that affect them, you think? So when it does come to all these companies and VCs and all these institutions and governments, how does that affect anything?
Okay, I'm going to give my analytical. I'm a fundamental investor, global macro, SPARC, financial engineering, fundamental valuation. That's my forte. And I'm a tech head too. The margins on centralized exchanges are artificially high. Okay, and they've been from the beginning. They collect rents they didn't know. They've been doing it for a while. I use Coinbase as an example. You take a look, I think I said this on the last show, you take a look at Coinbase's customer assets, you divide that by their operating income, okay? You get a very, very large number relative to its actual peers in the traditional world, roughly 4%. Take Charles Schwab, a much, much larger, much more established company, you're talking 100 basis points max, okay? E-Trade, Interactive Brokers, basically any other entity that does broker dealing. Coinbase is a broker dealer. It's not an exchange, technically, but I can understand that because you didn't have hardcore financial heads in crypto in the beginning. You had cypherpunks, the developers. So, they called it what it seemed like from layman's nomenclature. A broker dealer with numbers that high is going to face competition. It's going to go down. They're going to face regulation. Those numbers are going to go down. They're going to face reality, such as the fact that we're using patented IP. Okay, I'm not picking on any individual company like Coinbase. It's the industry I'm directed at. Okay, not Coinbase per se. So I don't want Coinbase to take this as any type of threat or anything else. I picked a popular brand. Let's call it centralized exchanges. On the decentralized exchange side, though, you have a similar issue. Regulation is going to force margins down. The fact that they're using IP that didn't belong to them is going to force margins down, et cetera. I see transaction-based fees approaching zero. So think of how Charles Schwab took broking, which used to be very profitable, and started discounting it. And then they brought it to the masses, the retailers, and the retail was able to enjoy buying and selling stocks. Then you have other business models such as Robinhood, which allows for allegedly transaction fee-free trading. I can see the same thing in crypto, okay? For the mere fact that when you put all the realistic expenses in, I don't think it's going to be profitable to charge retailers, retail participants for transactions, unless those retail participants are very, very ignorant. And even if they are, over time, someone's going to come in and offer them a better deal. This means they have to add value somewhere else. They have to come up with a product that's more value add. Take a look at Google. You know, Google has some of the best products available in the internet, and you pay nothing for them because they find different business models, different revenue models. Expect the same thing to come to crypto. The only real problems are two. One, you have opaque and draconian regulation. I think that's starting to rat itself out. You know, the SEC is getting their tail whipped, and Senator Gillibrand and Toomey came up with suggested legislation that looks like they actually tried to take a look at it and do a good job. And you have the fact that lost my train of thought. Then you have actual competition. Okay, and competition will drive new business models, and the traditional way of doing things, overcharging per transaction, is just going to go the way the dodo bird. I could almost guarantee it. It's a possibility, if I'm correct with our proclamations of IP, I might be able to force the issue by being creative.
So, okay, a lot to unpack. Goodness gracious. This is why, Reggie, I said before, I know I had to put myself on a time limit with you, because this will mess around and turn into a 3 or 4 hour show. So I'm going to be very specific with some of the questions. First, I wanted to backtrack a little bit because I agreed. So many things I agree with you, and I've noticed in the industry as well. But one of the things you pointed out was it surprised you that so many companies weren't doing their due diligence on IP. And nobody, this is you're right. And here's my thoughts and reasons why. The companies were operating just as any average retail individual. I'm thinking they're thinking, hey, great regulation, let's get in and make things happen, move, we'll pay the fines back now. We just saw, the SEC and a couple other folks are going after Binance now, right? Or what else? A couple other platforms out there, of course, the SEC is going after. And this is like, all right, like what's really going to happen? They're probably going to pay a civil fine at the end of the day. This is more like, to me, seems distortive. So I'm with you. When it came to them not doing due diligence, I think they literally didn't want to. But you're right. It actually is shocking. And I want to say not only did they not want to do it, I think it may have been from a resource capacity as well. If you're a new institution coming in here, they're already scared and they're on the fence. So not only do they put up millions of dollars in the actual market, as well as I do, the due diligence on that type of stuff, depend on a company as the size of the institution that's coming in, they may be spending $500,000 to $1 million on low end, which, by the way, is nothing. You're right, is nothing when it comes to doing the due diligence, but they didn't want to spend the money. And now it looks like they might have got caught slipping on that. So I definitely want to highlight that IP comment. But what are your thoughts on specific reasons of why they didn't do due diligence across the board, whether it's for your patents or anybody else? Why isn't this a thing in this space?
Okay, well, I'm not the only one with patents. You have Mr. Popular, Craig Wright.
Right. That's why I said everybody, a few different. Yeah.
There's not quite a few, but there's at least 3 patent holders who are not part of the club who have enough to draw attention. But the reason is probably the cypherpunk mentality. We believe in open source. We don't believe in IP protection. We don't believe in patents. With all due respect, not trying to be condescending, because I'm not like that. Hopefully I've shown that over the years I've been on the show. That's a very ignorant perspective. You cannot believe in open source licensing and then say, I don't believe in IP protection. The only way to have an open source license is to enforce your IP rights, or else you can't enforce the open source rules. Open source means anybody can use the intellectual property that you put out, okay? If you want to enforce that, that means you have to take ownership of the copyright of the code, and you say, I'm going to allow everybody to use it, but I'm not going to allow you to use it for commercial purposes. Or if you make a change, you have to incorporate it in, or XYZ. Once you start making rules, you are enforcing the copyright or enforcing your IP. So how are you going to say I'm in favor of open source, but I'm not in favor of IP rights? You know, that shows ignorance, and not ignorance in a condescending fashion, ignorance as in not knowing what you're talking about. And I think the open source mentality is what those are the pioneers of crypto, okay, in general, the guys on the ground doing the coding. And I think that seeped into the ethos of the crypto companies. But that's not good business, because when you get the actual businessmen come in, they don't play those games. And if we're putting money into it, we're going to claim it. It's just that simple.
So, all right, now I got to interject. And this is the second thing I was going to bring up as well. And again, absolutely 110% correct. Zay and I have these conversations often, especially early on. We had these conversations. And then I've been saying it on the channel for forever, since essentially we started. I noticed this early on in the crypto space as well. After about a year, I started in 2016, like officially started. You know, I was on the fringe, like, oh, I thought about it in this year. I officially started in 2016. But after about a year, I already started noticing through different platforms. I was using protocols, trying to do whatever, just dealing with the people in crypto. I was like, oh, you motherfuckers are smart, but y'all don't know that much about business. Like, it was just clear as day. I was like, you don't know about PR messaging. You don't know about narratives. You don't know about geopolitics and how this is going to affect it. National security is a catch-all phrase. Like, and then when you just talk about running the actual business, I would use Bittrex, aka Shittrex, as the perfect example. The 4 people who ran that business, I think still actually running it, the day-to-day operations, are developers. They're developers, which is why on the weekends you get no support, because they're just working 2-3 days a week type of deal. When they grew, they started trying to pay attention more, but essentially you have developers across this entire space. And again, like you said, it's not a knock. It's just, I think, a ignorant thing to try to do, to say, I'm going to be the player, the coach, and the owner. And it's like, no, you hire a coach, you have an owner, and the players play. Like, it's different positions. So, and as far as the morality, for those listening, as far as the morality of business, I also want to push back, regardless of, you know, if this is upheld and Reggie receives the consensus and this is happening, or if it doesn't, regardless, or not even him, if it's Craig Wright or some of these other notable people out there with patents that aren't in the club, or even those in the club, I mean, we're not going to throw morality behind business, especially when there's no bodies dropping. Like, this is contractual, legal business happening. So the morality, you got to kind of leave it at the door, especially already noticing how it's been ran. So, I mean, they're trying to get us all proof of work to go proof of stake. A lot's changing quickly. So also agree with you, the margins. I covered this the last couple of days when it comes to margins, as far as PayPal, of course, was in the news today, because they're allowing you to offboard your crypto from wallets. Now you can send it to external wallets, something that of course should have been allowed, but 2 years later they're allowing it. And one of the statements I made was that, yes, like that type of behavior, especially since the PayPal fee is at 3.5 to 4.5%, as well as Robinhood, this would put the pressure to, I think, turn people toward Bitcoin pay servers and everything. But I actually see what you're saying now. You're saying, no, they're just going to eliminate the margin in totality. So how do these businesses continue to operate and exist if we're getting rid of the margin? That's a big fee that these companies take to make their money. How do you see them making that capital loss?
Well, come up with a way to make money that doesn't gouge retail investors. I'm going to run a couple of hypotheticals. I'm not going to use any brand names, any corporate names, so I don't want anybody to say Reggie was threatening, etc. Let's assume when I make a public proclamation, especially when I back it up with analysis and research, I am serious and I know what I'm doing, and I have a lot of smart people to help me. I don't sit in my basement and do it myself, right? There's a lot of intellectual capital goes in. So let's assume Bitcoin doesn't infringe, as I say it does. And let's assume Ethereum doesn't infringe, as I say it does. Look at what is considered the large exchanges, the top 8 globally or in the US, okay? What are they going to trade if they're trying to avoid the patent? The top 5 assets are covered. So what would they trade? If you took Bitcoin and Ethereum, just Bitcoin and Ethereum and everything that runs on it, stable coins, etc. Okay, let's assume a mythical cease and desist occurred. Would these companies be in business, the exchanges? Just think about it. So what they need is, I'm not saying, that's the case. And I'm not looking to drive anybody out of business, of course, but I'm also not looking to have anybody use my patent and IP that I slaved over for 12 years, or whatever, to use for free. That is a significant expense that covers almost 100% of their revenues. And then look at all the service companies attached to them: cold wallets, cold storage wallets, layer twos, side chains, payment companies using the Lightning Network, etc. You need more diversity, and you need a more frictionless way of charging for it. Google makes a lot of money, and they're able to deliver very, very utilitarian products, frictionless to the end user, and end users don't complain. One reason they don't complain is, again, I have to bring that word up, ignorance, because the product is not Gmail. The product is king. Okay, the product is not Google search, it's king. They're selling you using Google search and Gmail as the delivery mechanism. Okay, but some users don't care, some users don't know. I'm not saying that exchanges and cold, storage wallet providers, et cetera, should use the same model, but I think more intellectual capital should go into business model and revenue model development than has been. Right now, everybody just replicated the traditional way of doing business, which was predicated upon ripping people off. We could do better.
So a couple of things, great takeaways on that. I want to pivot for a second. And I see everybody in the comment section. Thanks for all those in the comments. What's going on, Smitty Farms? Thank you for smashing that like. Make sure you guys smash that like and share. Share this video, folks. Get the conversation going. Too Young, Too Gray. Hey, Black Period. The Recycling Guy. Crypto Rasputin. What's going on, Gems? Alec in the house. Todd. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. Cryptonomics, Jake Fever, Surreal Innovation, Dewan. We'll get to those comments in the section. One of the things that's been in the news is that new draft bill that came out from Senator Loomis, and it looks like that they're trying to regulate even DeFi and DAOs. Can the DeFi market, in your estimation, be regulated? Like, can true DeFi? I mean, you can only get so far, right? But not the CDFI platforms, but the ones that are like, this is pretty, it's not all the way there, but it's pretty far along. The algorithm works, or the protocol works, and it doesn't need that much human intervention. At this time, you just need somebody to pay for the server space. But can decentralized exchanges and these things be regulated?
I believe they can if the regulators really use their head and try to get their arms around it. Number one, if properly done, regulation is good. Regulation, and remember, I'm the victim of a very, very in my opinion, overzealous party. I'm going to call it party, so I'm not going to even say, who they are, what they do. But I have a reason to be subjective, but I'm trying my best to be objective. Regulation is not bad. Only misapplied regulation is bad. To avoid full regulation was difficult, and if you do achieve it, what have you accomplished? For instance, to show how hard it is, you're saying mostly decentralized. Well, if you have to pay for server space, unless you have decentralized server space, then you're centralized. And it's very, very difficult to live in a mythical fourth dimension. And it's only mythical because we're not aware of it, but it's very, very difficult. I think the attributes of distribution outside of full centralization is good, depending on the use case. But in terms of corporate governance, I think it's very useful. But to pretend that you could go full decentralized, I think is a waste of time. And then if you do accomplish it, what happens when you actually need regulation? What happens when someone does something very foul to you, you want to rely on the state? Like the people who don't want to pay taxes, and I don't want to pay taxes. But when your house catches on fire, you do want to call 911. You expect the fireman to show up. So you got to make up your mind. So you want it left or right. You can't have it both ways.
Right. And I'm more of toward the self-regulatory side of the fence. So I'll be like, hey, I'm calling up my private fire department now. I'm gonna pay them out of pocket now.
I'm in full favor of SROs as well. The problem is SROs are ran by the boys. A self-regulatory agency or organization is an organization ran by the boys. check out that Amazon Prime show. If you haven't seen
I just watched the come on, season 3. We already come on, you know who you're talking to now.
Yeah, that first episode, the beginning was a bit much, but you know.
Yeah, I was like, they had to check the box early, I guess. I was like, they had to check. I was like, they almost lost me. Listen, y'all keep playing. But I knew they were just checking the box to get it out the way. But I was like, hey, it's other shows lost me, and literally other shows have lost me. So I was like, y'all almost lost me. If it wasn't for the first 2 seasons, they would have lost me. But they get into gory and everything anyway. That's a whole nother topic. They're trying their best to hang on this year. They don't need all the extras. They just need to stick to the storyline. Anyway, we're talking about The Boys on Amazon. Shout out season 3, folks. If you don't know about it, it's a crazy show. Want to go to one last question before we get to some of these comments really quick. And I can understand if you can't answer. We kind of spoke about this before the show, but out of curiosity, our own in-house warrior, Alex, said, which BIP specifically infringe on your patent, if you can talk about those?
I'm not going to get into that because
all good.
You know,
I
don't
in
want
the
to
comments.
advise people to do things against my best interest. But if you really, really want to know, it's not hard to do it the same way we did. Read through the patent, understand it, read through all the Bitcoin code from inception till now, and pick it out.
So Reggie, what do you say to people? Because there's a couple in the comments. You know, you have your naysayers. More or less those who are really just Bitcoin maximalists who definitely don't want anything to happen to the project. But what do you say to the people? They're saying, well, this is like what Craig Wright did. This is what other people did. This is just a money grab. Like, what are your thoughts to that?
Well, Craig Wright and I are very, very different. We've had a little exchange over the last 24 hours. I'm not going to participate in any further, but you know, this is just a money grab. Let me try and unpack that. Number one, if you're in America, is there a problem with grabbing for money? Why are you buying Bitcoin?
Listen, in general, I won't say that for Bitcoin because I like the technology seriously. I like using it without third party, but I will agree with you. I've had the same speech. I'm like, we are capitalists. You all need to wake the hell up and understand where you're at. I love the capitalistic society. I'm good here. So my bad, Reg, but go ahead.
I've worked for many, many years without payment. I mean, 4, 5, 6, 7 years without getting paid. 2 or 3 or 4 years, probably more realistic. Obviously, I'm not in for money grab. I invented things. That's where the patent is from. It's a certificate that says I invented X, Y, and Z. Okay. What I invented was incorporated in many other chains and many projects. They incorporated my invention, not the other way around. I'm not going after projects. They incorporated my invention, put my invention into their code. And they built so much on top of my invention, it'd be unrealistic for them to take it out. Money grab. This is called entrepreneurialism, capitalism, the US. I don't want to hear that nonsense. Okay, literally don't. You don't like it, move to a socialist country. Or better yet, you invent something, take 5 or 6 years, a few $1 million of it. You invent something, give it away for free, let someone else make money on it. Then we can have a conversation.
So just to be clear, because this is where it looks like some of the debates going back and forth. To be clear, some of these projects, including Bitcoin for specific, some of these projects say, look at some of the work you have already done, some of the things you have created. Like this is Reggie Middleton. This is how he made Veritasium. This is how this came from. They looked at some of that work and then took that and updated their code with that work. Is that what you're telling me?
I have no idea if they looked at it or not. I'm not going to assume that I can ascertain what their mindset was at a different time, different place. I just know I invented X. X appears into it.
Okay.
I consider X to be mine. My son on the last episode, I don't know if it was on my show or yours, we're getting old, getting confused, but he came up with a very good analogy. You have Ford Motor Company, okay? Or let's use Tesla since they're popular. Tesla comes out with this fantastic car. Everybody likes it, technologically advanced. King decides to invent algorithmically driven air conditioners, okay? Tesla installs that air conditioner into their car and they sell that car. Tesla is now infringing because they're selling a car with King's invention in it. Just that simple. Okay, they consciously decided to put King's invention into their car. Did they know King invented it? Who knows? Did they do it on purpose? Who knows? But they did it. So as you sell cars with that air conditioner in it, you're selling an infringing product. That's a way of breaking it down conceptually for the layperson, I believe, to understand. Now, if you don't want to sell an infringing product, exclude the air conditioner that you did not invent from the car and sell it without the air conditioner. Now, not many people want a car without an air conditioner, and there goes a conundrum. You could pay the license fee for the air conditioner. Does that make it simpler?
No, that definitely does. I hope that explains it a bit more out there. I still see everyone going back and forth. One last few things with the comments. Some things I will say, people, is that you all in the comments are kind of saying the same thing. I'm seeing a lot of people push back, essentially saying that, there's patent trolls out there. Patents don't mean anything unless courts enforce them. Blah, blah. Surreal innovation. I think he hits it on the head. Patents mean what they mean. And in such an early space, it'll absolutely mean something. I worked in patents for years. So that's what I think is going over a lot of people's head. You can love it, hate it, regardless. That's why I say you have to take out the morality of it, because I saw someone else say, hey, again, that's where I stand. Bitcoin, I love the system of it, as far as I don't need a third party to do any type of transaction. But again, people, that has nothing to do with business. We talk about this on the show every day. When we talk about regulation, the U.S. essentially just said any DeFi platform or DAO that has an American citizen attached to it needs to register with the U.S. That covers the entire planet from the United States point of view. So you can, like, that, the morality doesn't matter. If it's the military and the police force is going to enforce it, is going to force it. So what I'll end with those comments is that Reggie has the patent. If it's enforced, as he says, if he gets the consensus, then it is what it is. People he has the patent. And if the courts agree, then we shall see. Other than that, Reggie, I think this is a good spot to end on. A lot of people are going back and forth and talking, and that's what we want for conversations like this, to get awareness out. But I'll definitely let you have the last word. What would you like to end this discussion on when it comes to Bitcoin specifically, even the Bitcoin code infringing on your patent?
Okay. Well, I want people to understand how this works. I fell in love with the Bitcoin white paper when I read it. I was like, wow. But I saw something different from most. I saw programmable money. Most other people saw, remittances, or potentially to speculate on, prices going up and down. I tried to capitalize on what I saw. In order for Bitcoin or any project, any technology to improve, it has to grow. Okay. If you grow and you grow on somebody else's property, you're still growing. You're just growing on someone else's property. If you expect Bitcoin to stand still, so if you want Bitcoin to have the same functionality as it did in 2010, well, then no problem. Okay. If that makes you a Bitcoin maximalist, no problem. I think that makes you a Luddite, personally. Okay. If you expect it to grow and add functionality, the Lightning Network, SegWit, the ability to do multiple unsigned transactions, et cetera, then you run the risk of stepping on someone else's invention. But see, that's how technology works in America and worldwide. I'm using a cell phone. I have several, right? Samsung, Sony, et cetera. These are marvelous devices. Okay, just 15 years ago, there's no way in the world I could have had a high resolution video conference. But I'm able to do it because the company came up with a very, very strong technology. They incorporated 400 other companies' technologies. They had to license it, and now we have a superior device. Or do you want to stick to the original rotary dial phone because you're a rotary dial phone maximus and you don't want things to move forward? Make up your mind: socialist Luddite or capitalist technophile. Pick a side.
There it is. One last thing, Reggie. We did get one more question that I love this question, so I have to ask. And it doesn't have to be an in-depth answer. It could be short, but just your quick thoughts. Let's say everything you say is true, is happening as you happen, the court enforces it. What does a post-world Reggie Middleton patent enforcement look like? What does a post-Bitcoin Reggie Middleton patent look like? Once they enforce it, what does it look like in our industry?
I see user transaction fees heading towards zero, frictionless. And I see incentives to start inventing new things versus just forking code and building on top of it. Because the value add of just forking code and building on top of it will be reduced relative to actually inventing something new yourself and building on top of that. So basically, you're going to see more diversity, more creativity in the space, and you're going to see much, much lower costs. and much lower barriers to entry. That's what I see.
All right, well, there it is, people. Listen, say what you say, but that was a great answer to that. I love it. With that, as always, thank you for watching and tuning in. Make sure you check out next week. Shout out to Marlon. He will be back to host the show. Of course, Reggie will be back to give you some more foundations of DeFi, and we can check back in with him, hopefully, on this crazy ass Senator Loomis bill, 600-page document telling us what we need to do in the crypto industry moving forward. We'll talk more about that next time. Make sure you smash that like and share, and we will see you all soon. Cheers.
Okay.